Hi, this is Mike from Challenge Island, Oakland County East, back with our Steamtastic Friday. We're in the middle of our sports series here at Challenge Island, and today we're going to tackle the technology of sports and some of the cool ways technology can help us out to be better sports players and to even make them work even better and have more fun. So today I want to acknowledge that we're going to pull some lessons from a really cool book called The Secret Science of Sports by Jennifer Swanson. So if you'd like to learn more about what we're talking about today, feel free to check out that book. It's really interesting. All right, so when it comes to technology, there's a couple basic things that we need to do in sports to be good at them that technology can help us out with. So the two general categories we'll hit today, first is speed. So in general, most sports, if you think about it, there's something we're trying to do faster and faster. And if we can do it faster than the other team, we usually do pretty well. So for example, when it comes to speed, if we can cut back on weight of some of the things we use, that can help us go faster. So for example, think of like running shoes. The lighter they are, the easier it is to move our feet. The lighter a bat is, the easier it is to hit the ball in baseball, things like that. So weight reduction can be helpful. Force, so multiplying our force can be good too. Again, think of like tennis shoes. So if we can figure out how do we take all that force that we're stomping on the ground with each time we take a step and bring some of that back into us to give us energy back, that would help us to have more energy for a running race. And finally, drag. So if we can reduce drag, that's really important. So what drag is, that's for example, like when you swim through the water and you feel that water pushing against you, that's the drag that's slowing you down. So for example, if you'd like to do a quick experiment on that, if you take, for example, let's say like a plate, maybe a piece of paper, a pencil, and a few other things, maybe a quarter, take those into the bathroom, put about 6 inches of water in the bathtub, move each of those back and forth in the water and see if you can feel the drag. For example, if you take the plastic plate and move it back and forth, that's going to be a little bit of work to do that. Where if you took a pencil and moved it back and forth in that same water, that's probably gonna be a lot easier for you. So the reason for that is because the pencil goes through the water a lot better, has a lot less drag. So wherever we can reduce drag, for example, when we're swimming, by having a nice slick swimsuit so that the water can move off us just like it does for fish and whales and animals like that, that would be really helpful. So we'll talk a little bit about how technology can help us there too. The other category that's also important is safety. So if you think about sports that involve running into other equipment, running into other people, for example, football, soccer, things like that, we definitely want to be safe. So when it comes to our shin guards in soccer or our pads or our helmet when we're playing football, we want those to be made of materials and technology that helps us to stay safe so we don't hurt ourselves. All right, so let's take a look at the couple types of technology we'll hit really quick today. So we're going to talk a little bit about materials and then about sensors. So first, in terms of materials, we're going to talk about some of the cool types of materials we can make just using carbon. So you might have heard of carbon before. Carbon exists all over the world. It's one of the most common substances we have. For example, as I'm talking to you today, when the breath goes out of my lungs, that's carbon dioxide. So every time you breathe, you're taking carbon in your body and putting it out in the air. So we all have carbon inside us. Also, if you write with a pencil, that's graphite. That's a special type of carbon that's kind of slippery and kind of flakes off so that you can write on paper. Even diamonds are made of carbon, or coal when you do a barbecue is made of carbon. The special type of carbon we'll talk about for sports today, though, is what we call carbon nanotubes. So what we do to make a carbon nanotube, so scientists or sports engineers, what they'll do is if you look at this, it's kind of shaped like a fence or like a chicken wire fence if you've ever seen where chickens live. So what they do to do this, every place you see where these lines come together, that's represented by an atom of carbon. So we take those atoms, line them up in this shape, and then roll them up into a tube. But it's not just any kind of tube, it's a very strong tube and very, very, very thin. In fact, if we would have to take about 2,500 of these tubes, stack them up on top of each other, that would be about the width of one human hair. That's all it is, so very, very small. But what we can do with these carbon nanotubes is we can build them into sports equipment like basketballs, golf balls, things like that. We can even build them into swimsuits to make them stronger and sturdier. And that helps us to get some more of that force, makes them lighter, makes them easier to work with. A newer type of carbon that's a little bit trickier to make but has a lot of great benefits for sports is what's called graphene. So the way we make graphene is kind of similar to how we do the carbon nanotubes. In fact, you'll see it's kind of a similar shape, but instead of rolling those atoms up into a tube, we just leave it as a thin sheet, a very thin sheet of just one atom thick. So these sheets are so thin, if you could take a sheet of graphene, this would be hard to do in real life, but if you could hold it up in front of you and look at it, you'd be able to see right through it. You wouldn't even be able to realize it was there because it's so thin. So one place we're using graphene now to make sports equipment better is in tennis rackets. So for tennis rackets, it's super important that they're light, that they're sturdy, that they can carry enough force to move that tennis ball to the other side of the court. So graphene gets built into many parts of a tennis racket these days and helps them to work even better. All right, the last type of material we wanted to talk about is nanoparticles again. So nano means very, very small, like a billionth of a meter, really tiny. But not just carbon can be nanoparticles. For example, silver can also be nanoparticles. So we can take super tiny pieces of silver, mix it in with sports equipment or sports clothing in particular, and that has some safety and health benefits for us. So what that can do, if we have those tiny silver particles, that keeps bacteria and viruses from being able to grow inside our clothing. So it makes the clothing a lot safer to use, and it actually also makes it so it smells better too. So if we forgot to wash it, it doesn't smell so bad. So that's another place technology can help us. So material has a lot of cool technology involved. Sensors also come in really handy these days. So for example, there's sensors out there called inertial sensors and accelerometers. So what those do, if you've got a phone, those have those kinds of sensors in there. Most cars have those kinds of sensors in there these days. So what those sensors can do is if you move the device, like your Fitbit or your phone or whatever it is, the sensor knows how fast you're moving or where you're moving your phone to, so it can measure that and figure out how fast you're going. So for sports, that can be really handy. If you can put those kind of sensors into your shoes or into your watch as you're moving around, you can see how fast you're going and figure out how you can get even better at it. Another type of sensor that comes in handy is a gyroscope. So those are built kind of similar. They've got a little bit of equipment inside them. So you put inside the computer chip a way to kind of measure where you're moving, but this can measure what direction you're moving. So for example, if I had my arm out, then I move my arm down or up, and a gyroscope would be able to sense that and figure out where I'm moving. So for example, if I was playing golf and trying to be sure that I hit the golf ball just the right way, those kinds of sensors would help me to understand where am I moving and what direction am I going, so I can figure out if I'm doing it right or if I maybe could do it better. And there's all other kinds of sensors as well. For example, a pedometer takes those kind of sensors we talked about and makes it so that we can measure how far we're walking or how fast we're walking. We can sense temperature. So we can see, for example, if we're doing a workout and getting warm, we can see how warm we're getting to see how much work we're putting in. Measuring our pulse rate, how fast our heart is beating, is really important to see if we're staying healthy. And even measuring how well we sleep. So sensors and apps can be used today to make sure we're getting the right amount of sleep so that as an athlete, we can be sure we're getting that 7 or 8 hours of sleep we need every night so that we're even better set to play sports the next day. So just to wrap it up, so technology, whether it's materials, whether it's sensors, really comes in handy with all kinds of sports today. So next time you're playing around with some equipment, take a look close at how it's made or try looking up where it came from. See if you can identify some of the cool technology that goes into it. All right, with that, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.